Coach, this has been awesome so far. Thanks for your thoughts there. We want to transition to a segment on the show we call Start, Sub, or Sit. For those potentially listening for the first time, we're going to give you three options around a topic, ask you to start one of them, sub one of them, and sit one of them, and then we'll dissect and dive into your answer from there. So, Coach, if you're set, we'll get into this first one.
Fire away.
All right. First one, we're going to kind of extend our conversation on aiding this on decision making. So we talked about that briefly here, but we're going to go back to it. And the framework for this question is uh, aiding decision making or aiding next play decision making. So
Okay.
to set the scene, player makes a mistake, something bad happens. These are
Okay.
three things that you might teach or want your players to do that helps them, kind of like you just mentioned a little bit with the toughness piece, get out of that and get on to the next play and make a good decision the next time down. So start, sub, or sit. Option one is teaching players how to use breath work or how to breathe. So make a mistake, how to take a breath, whatever it is. So breath work is option one. Option two is their internal self-talk, how they talk to themselves, what they say after a mistake. Or option three is their external communication with teammates. So you make a mistake, you don't get in your own head and loop to yourself, but you communicate with others. So start, sub, sit, start being the one you think is most important for a player. Breath work, self-talk, external communication.
Um, Start external communication. Uh, Sit self-talk, or sorry, sub self-talk, sit breath work. I think breath work is hugely important. Um, but I think it can only show itself in our sport either before the game or before you go in or at stoppages or when you get subbed out. Even stoppages is tough because you're communicating with teammates. Um, but the self-talk is something that we train and we work on, but we're really big on being other oriented. Like our number one thing is it's a whole lot easier to lift up the people around you than to always lift yourself up. And that is the idea behind one of the culture words that right now is almost um, as commonly used as pace and culture in this country right now in basketball, and that's Ubuntu, right? Everybody's stealing it and using it, but I am because we are. And the idea is if I lift up the four people around me, it will inevitably lift me up. And so I could just pour into them and it will help me and my decision making and my play because they're all playing at a higher level. So,
Coach, great answer. I want to dive into your it's start and sub. So your external communication with teammates and the self-talk that they give each other. And as you mentioned in the first part of our conversation, I mean, basketball is such a unique sport where you don't have built-in time to get over yourself. Like football, you don't have 30 seconds or 25 seconds in between a play to reset. You got to keep going. How do you want on the start? How do you want them to externally communicate to each other? They make a mistake. Like, what does it that to you look like so they kind of get out of their head?
we talk a lot about the idea of uh, here's another term for you, stolen from Alabama softball, is mudita, right? Vicarious joy in another success. So, can you find that true love and passion and joy for another team member's success outside of yourself? That's one, right? That's one way of external expectations. Congrats, or I'm proud of you, or great job, or good pass, whatever it might be. Um, and then the other one um, would be, sorry, you have to give me a second here.
You're good.
You're
Take your
good.
time.
Trying to think about where I was going to go with that. So I appreciate the fact that you can edit.
Oh yeah,
All good.
I can re-ask the question too if you'd rather, if you
Yeah.
want me to.
Go ahead. It was a good question. Let me just regather my thoughts there.
Okay. Okay.
All good.
Cool. Um, so coach, kind of talking about your start and your sub, the external communication and self-talk. I'll get to the self-talk in a second. With the external communication, how do you foresee that? Like, what does that look like on the court to you? Like, what are things that you want your players to be doing in that?
So, two things. One is another thing that's stolen is from Alabama softball. Is their culture is based on mudita, right? Another term that means vicarious joy in another success. So, can you find true love and pride in your teammate? Great shot, great pass, whatever. So that's to the positive. But then to the possible negative, one of the words in our culture doc that we talk about is truth. And the idea that clear is kind and unclear is unkind. And so often we choose to be vague or ignore the problem because it's going to feel uncomfortable for me to negatively address it with somebody else. They might not like me in response, but we try to get them to understand that no, 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 y'all are going to have a better connection, human connection, by being clear in a kind way. It doesn't have to be, you suck, but
Yeah.
if you can clearly talk to your teammate and address something that's happening, think about how that impacts your human connection with them. Think about how human connection impacts your ability to read off each other. Now think about how your ability to read off each other impacts your decision making. Like, does it really matter if you congratulate your teammate or you tell them the truth? Maybe not, but maybe. And then if you do it again, maybe again, and then you continue pouring into them and it builds and it builds and it builds. And like that's how over the course of time, man, you see these teams that you could think about. I'm sure you know men's, women's basketball, different programs that you think of like, man, they play so smart. They play so together, like whoever it might be. And when you think about those teams, I think they probably have an extreme level of external communication. They talk to each other. Um, and on that, we build it. So whenever we have a team meeting, team meal, they come to the house, anything, we have one of those back of door hanging shoe racks, and every player and coach has to put their cell phone in it. Um, and so we train communication. We sit down to dinner, nobody's scrolling their phone. We are communicating. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Pat, can I ask one more?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Coach, sticking on the external communication and the internal self-talk, the start and the sub, how much do you think about when you're talking teaching and learning all that earlier too? There's players that are naturally more reserved, quieter, introspective versus your louder, more extroverts. So on the introvert versus extrovert scale, and someone that's an introvert might, after a mistake, go into themselves quickly versus an extrovert is going to be loud. And I guess thinking about when you know your players and trying to get the introverts out of their shell by being more extroverted and maybe extroverts to, hey, maybe take a beat and do some internal self-talk. I guess, does that come up at all in thinking about just, who are these players and what type of thing they really need to help them overall get through, difficulties?
Yeah, definitely. One of our assistants, Sally Higgins, she's actually finishing her master's degree in sports psychology. So she has weekly meetings with every player. And you talk about an asset to have somebody who can help their mental training, but is also on the court. A lot of the places have a sports psychologist, but they're working across all different sports on the campus. Or even if they are with your team all the time, they're in the stands jotting notes. Like you talk about an asset. So we can train a lot of this stuff um, for different personalities, individual based. What do they need? But regardless, across the board, one of the things we try to talk about a lot, and I think this is an important skill for life, is courage and choosing courage. And when we talk about being brave and being courageous, I think a lot of us think about that as the person who goes and runs into the fire, the person who has no fear, is the courageous or brave one. That's factually not true. The person who runs into the fire with no bravery or with no fear is stupid. That's fire.
Yeah.
Courage is being scared and choosing to be brave anyways, right? Um, so for our players, based on their personality, okay, you're an introvert and it's uncomfortable for you to speak up. What will your teammates think? What if you fall on your face? Or what if you don't know what you're talking about? Choose to be brave. Yes, it is scary. Yes, it is unknown. Yes, it is, you know, gives you anxiety, and choose to be brave anyways. Okay? You're the extrovert. You're quick to speak. You're the leader. Yes, it's uncomfortable for you to sit in that silence and to not say and come to your teammates' aid, but choose to be brave and courageous and give them the space to speak up. Um, I think it's a huge asset in life, and the best teams have it.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Coach, my follow-up, right now we're talking about like failure recovery, being able to get to the next play. But if we kind of zoom out of the game, but look at just decision making, and we've talked about it in how you train, how you think about training, randomizing, but and maybe this is a follow-up to breath work and breathing. Are there things that you as a staff are thinking about in these meetings to help your players become better decision makers that isn't necessarily always getting them on the court and repping them out against live bodies?
Yeah, I think um, we talk about um, their mental capacity as they come to the floor, right? And where are they mentally? If you ever think about a time you were in the zone as an athlete, right? That 30-point game, that night you went off, whatever, and you think about how you were feeling emotionally and what was going on in your brain, you weren't flatline. You weren't, not intense, but you also weren't freaked out or emotional or over the top. You were somewhere in between, right? And so we color coordinated with these mental zones of green, blue, red, and we can work on them purposely getting themselves to the green, which would be resting heart rate. Your brain wavelength, if you were hooked up to a monitor, would be very slow, long waves. Um, right? You think about like athletes that need to master the green are like golfers,
Mm,
right? You've got this 4 to 6 hour window that you can't get too high. You got to be able to maintain throughout, right? And then you've got the other extreme, which is the red. And the red for us is emotionally volatile. So it could be super sad. It's usually pretty angry, super frustrated, right?
yeah.
And we'll talk to the players about, okay, if we were sitting here right now and a lion walked through that door, do you need to remember how to run whatever set we just put in yesterday? No. If a lion walked in there right now, could you make a three with confidence? No. Why? Because your anxiety is going to skyrocket, right? Your cortisol levels are skyrocketing. It's fight or flight. Like we got to survive this thing. The problem is, since caveman times, our brains haven't adapted to the fact that that's not a lion. That's just my coach might take me out. But
Hmm.
we still have the exact same response. We still get sweaty palms, increased heart rate, brain wavelength shoots up and down like crazy. And then they don't remember a play. Or bring it back to decision making, they don't know that the two defenders just switched the ball
Yeah.
screen and they flipped and rescreened and set it again. And we're going, they switched the first one. What do you think they're going to do on the second? But think about it. If they're worried about the fact that the other team just went on an 8-0 run, they're not thinking, they're surviving. And so we will do work on training, getting to what is the middle zone, which is the blue, which for us is you're amped, but you're focused. And
Hmm.
that might include breath work. That might include um, journaling and getting your thoughts out because maybe you come to practice or you show up to the gym and you're in the red. You just had a really hard test and you're frustrated and you don't know what's going on. Or I just had this fight with my significant other and I'm not focused. Okay. You got to get yourself to the blue. Maybe you journal, maybe you color, maybe you listen to a certain music, whatever it might be. Or the opposite. You just woke up from a nap. You're tired. It's 6 a.m. practice. You're struggling, you're draining, you're in the green. How do you get yourself up to the blue? right? The same thing we talked about with confidence earlier in the conversation. Like if you're in the green or the red, there is a 0% chance you play well.
Yeah.
If you're in the blue, you give yourself a chance. And I will tell you, like, as I share this, we've had athletes that are like, no, 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 no. I play better when I'm mad or angry. One, you don't. And two, those zones are different for different
Yeah.
people, right? Like Draymond Green or Patrick Beverly, their blue, or like Angel Reese, her blue might look different than an Asia Wilson's blue. Like, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
different personalities, what it might look like.
Yeah.
So like that'd be an example of the way that we train the mentality and decision making that has nothing to do with basketball, let alone watching
Yeah.
film, being on the courts, stuff like that.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Coach. All right, Coach, we're going to go back to the court, looking at the defensive side of the ball for our last start sub sit here. And this one we've called defensive rule accountability. And we're going to give you three actions that, based on the players involved, which of those actions you think would be there'd be universal application of the standard of what you expect your players to defend it versus what maybe has more wiggle room if we look now at the players involved in the action. So I'll give you the actions. If we can clarify it, if I'm over talking it at the moment right now, but the
You're
three
good. Go
actions
ahead.
are a pick and roll, option two, a DHO, or option three, an off ball screen. And so your start would be which one would have the most variance and your ability to apply your base coverage based on knowing if this player can be more aggressive, has the capability versus this player has less capability. And I need to, yeah, not hold them straight accountability or universal accountability.
As a start sub sit,
Yes.
and we're going in order of most rigorous with the rules versus most lax, right?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, that works. Let's go that way. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start pick and roll. We're going to sub DHO, and we're going to sit off ball.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, can I say that with a caveat?
Of course.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. If we're being fully vulnerable and transparent, which obviously I value if I'm going to say these things, I have gone back and forth, and I don't know that I still, on whatever the date is, decided fully on off-ball screening action if we're going to switch or stay.
Mhm.
Because I think the switch puts your help defender, your bottom, and we're a force baseline step up seal down team. And we have a name for that person, our bottom weak side defender. I mean, everybody's got different names, whatever, NBA teams called the 2-9, or you got the Gaucho. I've heard all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
For us, the bottom weak side defender is the strongest person in our defense, the most important person in our defense, and the strongest superhero is the Hulk. So that's going to be the Hulk for us. So
Nice.
again, like,
Yeah.
talk about creative coaching. I don't know that that's creative or silly, but it has, stickiness power.
Yeah.
Um, so I said sit the off ball, and I think I said sit it because I'm not positive, but I know that the Hulk better be there for our core defense. The start for us would be pick and roll coverage, uh, and the sub would be DHO, partially because of our league and our conference. We don't face a lot of creative DHO actions.
Hmm.
Um, I've seen y'all post like stuff that's really, really good. We don't see a lot of it for us. We do see a boatload of pick and roll. And our league is very guard dominant in pick
Yeah.
and roll. And so for us, that coverage has to be on point, by far the most positioning. Um, so I do find the question interesting, though, on even less of the start sub sit, but more of the hardcore, this is the rule versus some leniency and freedom to be aggressive. Because at least the way that I've been brought up in basketball for us, everything starts for us with our positioning defensively. and the level of discipline and accountability to be in the right position. Um, nine times out of 10, a mistake happens because a player was 2 to 5 steps out of position.
Hmm.
Right.
And so, for us, the rules defensively are really, really hard. I've used this metaphor before, but defense for us is a science. It's biology, it's chemistry. There are hard rules to science. If they are here, we must be there. Offense for us is jazz music. Like we're going to play the instruments the way we know how to play them, but we don't know how the song's going to sound that night. We might play it totally different. Um, so we'll be more disciplined and accountable defensively and a little more free and flowing offensively.
Hmm. Coach, I mean, you nailed on the point. We framed it through three different actions, but I think the conversation as a whole is really interesting. And you touched on it, like what you will hold them accountable to, the position. But as like the play unfolds, I guess what is the clarity you think about in terms of is it basically, what they should be giving up or in this action? I guess the clarity in the shot spectrum you're trying to fight for. Or I guess what other ways are you thinking about that you can hold players accountable, knowing that
Mhm.
you're going to have different players with different capabilities, different mindsets, commitment to defense, lack of commitment, but they're all going to be valuable to your team. So, we're all facing these players of different varieties that have to be on the court and how we think about holding them accountable.
So comes back to that word toughness and our definition of it, right? With the aggressive, disciplined, and unselfish. So a lot of this is the combination of those three based on who you are. So discipline, yes, we have a rope between our person and the ball, and our fingertips are on that rope at all times, and we move as our rope moves.
Hmm.
When there's an exchange on the backside, you have the discipline of when you're the top defender coming to the bottom, you're touching the opposite block, right? I saw Todd Golden talk about that in a coaching clinic and touching the opposite block all the way past the midline to make sure that your Hulk is ball side, ready to step up. Those parts are discipline, right?
Hmm.
But then aggressively, we want to lead our conference in deflections, charges taken, and fouling. Now, I'm not talking about reckless fouling, but you look across the board, the best defenses all lead they're like top two in their conference in fouling. They're not afraid of fouling. The refs can't call them all, and until they start, going through the trainings that the pro refs go through, they're gonna they're going to morph to how the game flow is going. We don't want to be reckless. We don't want to be dumb. But yes, it is if we have the discipline there, then we find the moments of aggressiveness and then the unselfishness to be in the right spot for your teammate, put your body on the line and take charges. So you think about like an opportunity to be uber aggressive. You're in a passing lane, you read the pass coming across, and you go to shoot the passing lane for a steal. If you miss it, will I be upset? It's going to come back to were you in position, right? The discipline to be
Hmm.
in the spot to do it. Were you aggressive? Yes, of course you were aggressive, but were you unselfish? Like, did you know that we were on a 6-0 run and we were going for the kill shot and I'm good with that one? That
Yeah.
was an unselfish, you were playing out of aggressiveness, that's fine. Or did you know that we were down 10-2 and you were selfishly trying to make the comeback by yourself when we still have 36 minutes of gameplay left? Um, and I
Yeah.
think getting them to understand those different things and the opportunities. We do talk about on our, I will add this point about knowing your personnel is I talked about our rope positioning. Like there's a rope between the ball and your defender, right?
Yeah.
How far up the rope do you go towards the ball off of yours? And that is a you question. We tried one year at Wyoming. I thought this was brilliant, but the players didn't quite grasp it. Is your defensive positioning really does come down to 4 questions. Who has the ball? Who's guarding the ball? who am I and who am I guarding?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right? If who has the ball is their eighth leading scorer, I don't need to go way over there. If who has the ball is the 20-point per game scorer, I need to be over there. Who's guarding them? Is that our best defender? Is that our worst defender? Did they switch? Is that the matchup we want? Right? Who am I? Am I quick and long and athletic? Can I get over there and still get back to mine? Or am I heavier footed? Am I slower? Do I need to be smarter about my position? And then who am I guarding? Is that a shooter, non-shooter, threat, non-threat, right? Um,
Yeah.
it made a lot of sense on paper to me. It didn't quite click for them. So, some creative
Good.
ideas work, some don't.
Yeah. Coach, it's my last question on this. You talked about fouling, and I wonder if you could just go a little deeper on or more detailed on which type of fouls you're okay with, at the rim attempts versus swipes for steals versus physicality on the perimeter. And if you differentiate where you want to be, top fouling team at.
We want to foul out of aggressiveness while being disciplined. And I do find it interesting in our game. We talk about like unique things about basketball, whether it's the flow of game. But another interesting aspect of our game is there are always these paradoxes, right? Coach, do you want me to take away the three or do you want me to take away the drive? Yes. Right? Like we
Yeah.
always catch our players in these gray area definitions. So, do you want me to be disciplined or do you want me to be aggressive? Yes. So, we want their positioning to be the way it's supposed to be. But fouling should happen out of aggressiveness. So, were you aggressive at the point of a screen and a confrontation? Great foul. Were you aggressive defeating a cut or a duck in the post? Great foul. Were you aggressive going to poke for a steal or going, to shoot a passing lane or shoot a DHO handoff and go, beat them to the point? Great foul. Now, were you on the perimeter and you got beat and so you put two hands out to stop them? That's a bad foul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to
Sure.
me, that's the difference is, or were you not on your rope? You got beat. You were late on the lift. Now you're flying out at him and you leave your feet and run into him. That's a bad foul because you weren't disciplined in your positioning. But if they can have that spot and then they can err on the side of aggressiveness, now I think now you're talking about elite defenses. Do we get there in year one? I don't know. But that's what we're trying to create.